My name's Jason Sherman down here. Got me listed as Director of Customer Support. What that really means is I do a lot of pre and post sales things. So I tell people how our software works and answer tech questions, and then I help people install it and get it set up and get it running and all that good stuff. So, and then we have other folks that also help with that as well. So we're going to do a webcast here. We're going to do a polling question, some overview, polling question, and then do a demo. I'll primarily be doing the demo. So we'll start with a polling question. If you have questions, you can post them in the Q&A either during or at the end. Happy to help out there. Looks like there's a chat thing going on. I don't know. Nope. Let me see here. Enlarge the presentation. Oh, yeah. Slide mode. Yeah, I'll do that. Sure. Well, the presentation really isn't the PowerPoint anyway, but I'll put it in slideshow mode so you can see. It's, as I said, not very good at this PowerPoint thing. So anyway, page down. Polling question number 1. Let me get up here to the polls. Let me launch the poll. What do you currently use to document and map the network? You can choose more than one. Oh, it's multiple choices. That's my favorite in all tests. Multiple choice. Usually you're a pretty high percentage of getting something right. So we usually leave the poll up for a minute to let everybody chime in. My favorite answer is coworker who seems to know everything. That always seems to happen at least 20% of the people we talk to. There's always that one guy who knows everything. Unfortunately, that guy usually ends up retiring, or girl. I shouldn't say guy, just guy. So that happens too. I have another. That's good. Visio, spreadsheets, Visio. That's pretty common. That's seems to be the big winner here is the spreadsheet Visio thing, or just Visio, the coworker, and then other. So other is my guess is probably like something like your monitoring tools like SolarWinds or something. Anyway, so thanks for that. It's always good to see. Let's see. So MIBs, connections, more automatically discover, bring existing data, ServiceNow, SolarWinds, create connectors. Well, you guys can read this. I don't need to read it too. I'll show you some of this anyway and talk about discovery and kind of how it works. So polling question 2. This webinar is really just about polling. Oh, maybe I didn't. Oh no, here it is. Polling question 2. Here we go. Launch polling. What are you most interested in seeing more of today? You can choose more than one. Again, multiple choice, my favorite. Automatically discover devices, properties, connections, third-party connections, SolarWinds, ServiceNow, Spectrum, import files and data from spreadsheets, and or Visio. Ooh. Got a little bit of a horse race, but I think the winner is discovery. It usually is. Third-party connectors is good. I guess the big one in there is ServiceNow, maybe SolarWinds. I don't talk to too many people with CA Spectrum anymore. Is CA still around? I don't even know. Importing files, very nice. I like our import. And then there's one, I think APIs or something. I can't even read the end of that. So let me end the polling. Yep, APIs. Well, the APIs tie into where our third-party connectors really, so that'll combine those two, but it's probably the same two folks that probably voted for that one. So anyway, close this out and page down. Oh, see netTerrain in action. There we go. That's my favorite thing to do anyway. Now I just need to go find my Chrome. Not that one. That one's pretty ugly. Although I do want to delete this, so. I know that's very messy. It's almost probably like your desktop, right? It's got crazy stuff all over the place. That's one of my engineering servers, but I'm going to use that because I'm going to push some data into it with our new collector. But before I do that, let me talk about netTerrain. So netTerrain is a web-based tool. You can buy netTerrain to install in your environment. You can also use one of our SaaS instances, so you can basically just do a cloud thing if you want, depending on what you want to do. how you want it to work for you. The systems and apps. Where is my, what happened to my sandbox? I don't know. I lost my sandbox. There, I'll just put it down here. All right. So my sandbox. netTerrain. First, how does it work? So netTerrain is a Windows platform installed on a Windows server. SQL Server is the backend database. And then from there, you can start to create documentation. What kind of documentation? Well, logical documents, physical, etc. How do you do that? Well, you can do things like drag and drop stuff, right? Drag, drop, drag, drop. Go find an object like a building, drag the building in, resize the building because it's too small, double click, drill down, add things like floors. I want to add a floor, drag the floor in, etc. You know, do this 10 or 20,000 times if you have a really large network and you've got full documentation. But it's preferred not to have to do that. But you know, what can the tool itself do? What are its capabilities? Well, again, you can do things like inside plant where you're showing a location, a building, whatever it happens to be, maybe multiple sites, multiple floors, rooms. You might show background images of floor plans. You show your racks, rack and stack stuff. You want to see down to, you know, see your devices rack mounted. You want to drill down and see connectivity, right, port to port. So, and with that information, then maybe you can also generate or see physical path, you know, what's physically connected to each other. How does that look, you know, using that information to help maybe troubleshoot, do capacity planning, you know, all these other things that sort of go with network documentation, you know, if you have it set up and configured right. So, but you don't want to do things manually, right? I mean, you prefer not to have to do what I did, which is drag and drop and create things. I mean, to a certain extent, if it's a small network, you can knock it out really quickly, but it's nicer if you can automate the task in some way, right? I want to create maybe all of this or some of this, or at least maybe some connections. Or maybe you're new to the network. Maybe you don't have any documentation currently. Maybe you just bought another company and you're like, we don't really know their network. It'd be nice to go out and physically do some sort of inventory or some sort of discovery, right? And get information and bring it in. But you also may have systems with data in it already. So you might be like, well, you know, I have a system like SolarWinds, or I have a system like ServiceNow where I track my inventory, basically. I track all my devices. Maybe it's not connectivity, I don't know. But you may track things like, oh, my assets that I care about, you know, phones and laptops, but more importantly, servers and switches and routers. All those things might be already, there's data about these things. There's data about my servers and switches and routers, and that data is stored somewhere already in some system, asset management system, ServiceNow, or network monitoring system, SolarWinds, et cetera, right? So can we leverage that? Can we take advantage of that to help us with our network documentation? So I don't have to manually drag this thing out into a drawing. It just creates it. Maybe it even rack mounts it for me. Maybe it even creates connections for me. I don't know. So that's, you know, that's sort of the ultimate goal. I want to do that. So with the netTerrain collector, did I start it? I don't know. There it goes. Just took a second to get going. So this collector thing, and this is the netTerrain collector, which you can download from the netTerrain server and install it either locally on your laptop. So you could walk around with this thing on your laptop, or you can deploy it to different places. This collector allows you to connect to a netTerrain server. So you can push data into a netTerrain server. What data? Well, I could grab data from something like Spectrum or vCenter or Velocity or SolarWinds or ServiceNow. What is the data that I'm collecting? Well, it's something like SolarWinds, I'm collecting assets. SolarWinds is already doing discovery, SNMP. It's getting all kinds of data and so on. So we discover all that, bring it back, and it's using their APIs. So we're using what they've given us, the tools that they give us to pull data from it. So it's reliable. It's usually pretty speedy too. ServiceNow, same thing. Go in, use their APIs to bring data back from. What does it do? Well, it brings the data, but it can create objects. So like if ServiceNow, you got 1,000 switches in there, it'll create every switch based on the model and bring that into netTerrain. So it can do those types of things, right? So automation. So you discover, push the data into netTerrain. So I can discover by doing a scan, and then I can do a push. And what does that look like? Well, first let me do a flush so I can get rid of data first. So if I look at the discovered items, this is blank right now. Go back to my connector. So I'm going to do a discovery though, in this case, SNMP. So I'm not using a system that has data in it. I'm just going to go out and create data from the systems that are out there that might respond to my SNMP get. How do I set this up? I put in IP addresses. I come over here, pop in an IP address from to. You can use a slash, 24, 32, whatever. Put in a version, put in your credentials. There's some other stuff you can put in if it's a different port for some strange reason. Close this out, and then I do a scan and go find my stuff. I gotta connect to my demo server VPN, so I may lose you. Now I should be back. So you should still see me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to do a discovery, and I'm going to push data over to that engineering server, that ugly one, or that ugly screen you saw where it was a jumble of information. The server itself is wonderful, but I'm going to do a scan. So it's going to go down and start to do stuff, right? So what's it doing? It's doing a discovery. So if I come over here back to Chrome and go to my top level engineering service, there's nothing in here yet. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff we don't care about right now. In the upper left corner, we'll end up with a little green circle that says SNMP discovery. And we will drill down into that and see what we discovered. What it's discovering right now is an SNMP block of devices that are in a lab. And so it's 25 devices. If I open this up, so it finished its discovery, you'll see there's different IP address ranges that it's discovering. I can click in here and see all those devices, right? And none of those are in the server right now. There's no data that's been pushed yet. So if I come back here, there's nothing there yet. So if I do a push, it's going to push the data into netTerrain. So I can control if I want to push the data, but I can also set it up to automatically do that. We do that under settings. We go scheduled discovery. So I can have it go out and do a scheduled discovery on a regular basis, every couple hours, every 10 minutes, every whatever. And then it can push the data too. I can choose it to have it push or not push, depending on what I want to do. Now, if you're in a location where you're doing a discovery and you can't push the data, right? You might be in a secure environment, firewall rules, et cetera, the usual stuff. You can save data to a local file. And then when you get close to the netTerrain server in a place where you can actually push the data, you can push it. You're pushing data. I'm pushing data right now using the netTerrain API. So I'm pushing data to the netTerrain server, to this URL, user and password, tells me the version and everything. So I'm pushing the data into the server, and it's using the netTerrain APIs for that. So it says it's done. There's a link here that I could click on. It's doing a check. It's blue now because it means it pushed data. And then if I come over here to the server, oh, there's the node. If I double click on that, that's what we discovered. That's the SNMP data. If I apply, now I've got some connectivity. These are connections between objects that are in different subnets. So different networks, IP ranges, whatever you want to call it. So I've got the 2020-21, the 2020-20, the 4510 and the 1010 or 151515. And then this guy, he doesn't have any connections to these, which is fine. But if I double click on one of these networks, then it opens up and it shows me what it's discovered for that IP address range. And it shows me some objects, like here's a firewall, this is a Cisco ASR, and you're like, well, wait a minute, why is this one sort of a blue rectangle? These ones look like devices. Because these have what we refer to as a matching property, a matching OID. So this OID, this SysOID, right? If I copy that, system object ID, and let's say this says it's a Cisco adaptive security appliance, but I don't really know what that is myself. And there's this one here. So this is an ASR 9000. So if we go do a search, maybe for ASR, I'm searching my catalog right now, so I'm going to find devices. There's a whole bunch of devices. I don't know if I have a 9000 in here or not, but we'll scroll across. And I'm going to go back and do another search for devices, because I want to see, let's see, let's do this ASR again. Okay, so ASR, so there's a 9001 and 9000V, so let me scroll across. So if we look at system OID for the 9000V, there isn't one. So if I put in that SysOID, all right, for that thing, okay, 9000V. So maybe that's a 9000V, I don't know. But I'm taking that OID and I'm saying, okay, well, that's my 9000. That's the one I use. That's the one I discovered. So if I want to, I could go back and do another push. Again, if this is set up to a schedule, it will just automatically do this. But so then it's re-pushing data, and then it should figure out that, hey, this is a ASR 9000V, and oh, there it goes. Change the object right there to the appropriate type. And how hard was that? You just take the OID, put it in for the device type that's it's supposed to be, and there you go. You're getting devices. It's magic. I'm going to go to another diagram, apply this. Now, in some cases, you'll also get connections, not just object to object like I have here, but you may also get them down to the port level. So we try and figure out port level connectivity. Not for that one. I do have a drawing here. Oh, here we go. So like this guy here, now I'm seeing port level connections. So we build our connectivity right now off the MAC tables, IP tables, etc. We're expanding that. We're adding more for CDP and LLDP now. That's going to be in a future release, probably in about 3 months. We'll have some of that. We're doing some seed discovery as well. So seeding off an IP address and just sort of building out from there. So a lot of good stuff happening. So we're really trying to build in this automation thing, using the collector connectors, enhancing what we've had in the past. We always had something called the integration toolkit, which could do some discovery and connections to tables and views. And then we built the collector so you could deploy the collector in different places, but also do this SNMP discovery, but also, or in addition, take advantage of other tools out there, SolarWinds, Spectrum, vCenter, and using their APIs to bring data. So lots of good stuff. Amazon, Azure, Nmap, if you want to do some Nmap discovery or just simple ping, do all those types of things. I really like the AWS myself. Been using that a lot because I do AWS, or a lot of AWS. So anyway, any questions? I'm running out of time here. Sorry, I kept blabbering on, but if you got questions that I don't answer now, they come up later, just ping us. You can reach out, sales@Graphical Networks, or you can email me, Jason@graphicalnetworks.com, although I'm going to push you over to one of the sales guys. Fred, you can email Fred@graphicalnetworks.com. He's a good guy. So Q&A. Can you create your own connector? Not yet, but we will create connectors for you sometimes as part of licensing agreement. or we'll create it if we were planning on doing it anyway, of course. So normally if you're a customer under maintenance, there's some things we will do, like certain reporting and reports we'll do as part of maintenance, sometimes connectors. If it's a sort of an oddball connector or a system that's not really popular or the APIs are really not very good, then usually we charge for that type of connector. But we're pretty, we're pretty flexible in those things. So if you have something in mind, let us know. We might already have it on the roadmap. Monitor, we do monitoring from the standpoint of we do a polling, so a status polling, like we'll check devices on a regular basis, like through SNMP. We'll say, okay, are you alive? And if it's not, then we can do things like change the appearance of the object, or do things like an email type notification. So it's not a true monitoring tool like some of the ones that are out there. So I don't want to give that impression because we're not there yet. But we do some, especially like polling, we do that for SNMP. Updated catalog, however often you want it. So as part of maintenance, you can request new objects from us, and we'll create them and send them to you. We're pretty good about that. I have quite a few. Many of my customers request catalog objects every day. We typically turn them around in 1 to 2 days. Usually it's one day. I mean, it's usually next day, but just depends on the number of objects you ask for, and if we can readily find the information we need to create it. But you can create your own stuff too. What's a nice thing about our tool? It's very flexible. If you want to create a catalog object, you don't need us to do it. All you need, go out, find a picture, and just model it in our modeler tool, which is built into the netTerrain. Works really well. It's really cool. In fact, you can always start with an object that exists, because you can basically make a copy or duplicate it, whatever you want. I think we call it cloning it, and then just change details. And you can add your own fields, and it's really good. Plug in for Forescout. Nope, never heard of Forescout. Doesn't mean we couldn't do it. I would just say, if you can do a little research, find out if there's a page for APIs for Forescout, then normally what I'll do is I'll just have an engineer take a look at it and see what kind of data they provide and how hard it is to use their APIs and things like that. And we'll do that just to, looking at stuff is, we don't like charge for that. It's more just giving you a heads up on if we think that it's a pretty easy connector to create, which some of them are. I mean, some companies like ourselves, we have a very extensive API library to allow you to control our software with APIs if you wanted to. So a lot of companies are doing that, especially the ones that have data, so people can pull data out, because that makes the tool that much more usable and user-friendly. So no, it's not a cloud solution only. So the question is this a cloud solution only? No, in fact, it's whatever you want it to be. You want a cloud, that's fine. You don't want cloud, you want to host it yourself, cool. You want a dedicated instance in Google's cloud, fine. We can quote you that too. We're pretty open to the path you want to take. Do you have to have those rack diagrams? Can I just use discovery and mapping portion open? Yes, that is true. I should have mentioned that. Never a lot of time, but you can do discovery and not. You can put things into a rack if you want to, or you can choose not to. And that comes down to licensing and cost, because if you don't need DCIM in racks, it's definitely less expensive. If you just want to do straight up discovery and put things more into a hierarchy, you can do that, or not. Well, it's fine too. Protection tools. Silent defense. Yeah, I'm sorry. I never heard of silent defense either, but it's the same. My answer is the same. If you have a tool that you want to connect to or pull data from, all about the APIs. I mean, we can technically pull data from non-API tools by connecting to a database or a view. It's just not as, it's not always as friendly anymore. So usually the APIs are the way to go if you can. But again, if you find information about any of those tools, just let us know. API, just do a search for API. And if you want to have a conversation about the data you want to bring in or how you want to do that, happy to have that discussion. How is netTerrain priced? It's, for the most part, it's per object. And an object for us is like a switch or a router, a building, a floor, a room. That's pretty much it. Anything you drag and drop from what we call the catalog, except we don't We don't license for subcomponents for devices. So ports, slots, cards, those are not included in the pricing. So those are just part of we just consider them part of the object, which is good if you got a lot of large chassis that have a lot of slots, because, they're 6512 or whatever the number is for the big Cisco chassis with lots of cards. That's technically one device for us, even though it might have 10 cards and thousands of ports. It's still one thing. So it's, for the most part, that's what you care about, is the number of objects. There's a couple other pricing pieces like outside plant, DCIM. So if you want to do the racks, true rack and stack stuff where it does the calculations and the EM, we didn't get into all that stuff, but that's what you need to sort of focus on. As far as discovery goes, the collector, there's no pricing for that because it's part of whatever you purchase as far as netTerrain goes. So, and it starts pretty inexpensive. I mean, you go to netterrain.com, and that's our so NETTERRAIN, netterrain.com. That is our SaaS offering website. So if you go there, you'll see some pricing for the SaaS stuff. It starts at $98 a month for like 200 objects or something, 250 or 100, I forget the number. And then if you want on site, it's similarly priced. I think it starts at 500 for on site. And I don't remember the numbers exactly, but Fred or someone in sales can help you with that. So, but you can start pretty cheap. Inexpensive, I guess I should say. I shouldn't say cheap, because it's a very robust tool, but it can be very inexpensive if you need it to be. Anyway, thanks everybody for your time. Really appreciate it. Oh, let me see if there's other questions. Sorry. Cool. Yeah, Stephen, just get in touch with us if you want to talk more about all those things. We're happy to go down that path. So any other questions, just reach out to us, call us. Happy to talk to you. We're not scary. We're not going to try and talk you into anything that you don't want or need. So we're just happy to catch up on the weather, see how COVID's treating you. So anyway, thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate it. Great as always. And look forward to hopefully talking with some of you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.